All right, we'll get going. Thanks everybody for joining our webinar. We're really appreciative of everybody's time today. And we're going to be spending some time talking about AI in business, construction business, but also, how it can apply to your business. My name is Joel Sosebee. I'm the director of sales for AtNet, if we've not met before. And we are a managed services provider. And as a part of that, we deal in managed IT services, managed cybersecurity, and managed AI. So we're having a lot of conversations with business leaders each week about AI. And we get a variety of different responses when we talk to people about what they're doing with AI, from a shoulder shrug to, hey, we're using it for sales and marketing and some other aspects of their business. So, what we wanted to do today is, first off, not make it technical. So this is not meant to be a technical webinar in any way, shape, or form. And it's to really highlight a few things, not so much to pinpoint exactly what you need in your business, but to give you some ideas of what you can do with the technology. We want you to see what's possible with the technology. So we're going to present to you three different use case problems, how AI can kind of handle those, and then we'll show you what that looks like visually in a little demo as well. All right. So first things first, I mean, the most expensive things that we see in business in terms of problems typically don't stem from technology. There are a lot of lack of visibility, and we're going to highlight a few of those things today. First thing is, and this is, I've got the citations down for each one of these things, but FMI Corp estimates as much as 60% or more of estimators' time on a weekly basis can be spent on manual takeoffs instead of pricing strategy and those type things. So we're going to highlight that for you. Also, 31%, and this is according to Procore and JLL research, that 31% of construction executives actually have real-time visibility into job costs. You may have reports, obviously, that you review, dashboards, and things like that. We're going to give you a glimpse of what the technology in front of your data can present to you. And then change orders in the change order process. And it's estimated as much as 5% of revenue is lost due to unbilled change orders. And so we're going to highlight how we can make sure that we're capturing those as well. So our goals are to focus on the takeoff and the estimation process, really to focus on the accuracy of that. There'll be some speed in there as well, but making sure that you've got accuracy. And we'll show you some things on that, the manual takeoff, and we'll highlight an example of manual versus using the technology for that. And then we'll highlight visibility on the executive side, so you've got visibility, and then money left on the job site. So things that obviously could result in change orders for you all potentially being missed, and so the margin piece of that. So as an illustration, and again, I mentioned this at the beginning of the webinar. So the idea is just to give you an idea of some of the things that are possible in your process, and your actual workflow may look a little bit different from this. The idea is just to sort of illustrate this as an example. But in any way, you've got a plan set that arrives, that you've got an estimator that's going to do a takeoff. They sit down, whatever your process is, I've got highlighted in here. It's a 2-day process or a 3-day process. It may be a week or two for you, just depending on the complexity of your business and what you're doing. But there's some sort of manual takeoff. And then based on the results of that, whether you've got an internal review and it goes to approval before the bid gets submitted, you've got a bid that gets submitted, and hopefully you win that job at some point in the not too distant future. Then you begin work on that. But in this case, and what we're going to highlight is there were things that were sort of out of sync on the plan set that weren't in the right places, and something gets missed. In this case, underground utility work begins in a couple of months, and conduit sleeves were missed from the checklist. They weren't in the bid in the right place, resulting in out-of-pocket expenses. The number is 18,000, whatever the number would be in your business. There's something that, unfortunately, we all have things that get missed, and those are painful things. And in this case, there's no change order basis for that, because you were supposed to bid based on the entire spec. So we just kind of highlighted what that process looks like without AI, putting AI in front of it. And we can talk about the specifics of that probably in a separate conversation, but plans and specs are uploaded, AI analyzing each section, extracting quantities, anything that looks atypical based on your process. It's trained on whatever your process is and however you assemble bids. And it looks for things that aren't in the right place potentially in those plans, and it can flag that for review. And then an added benefit of that is a consistent scope capture, regardless of the estimator experience. So think as you bring new people into that role, obviously you've got supervisors that are in charge of them while they're doing that, but leveraging the technology to help eliminate or alleviate some of the extra time for that. Second scenario is putting AI in front of your data so you can get answers to questions like these. These are just some examples of the idea is the data is there. If you're getting it from a dashboard or report now, how much better would it be if you could ask a question just in natural language, either typing it in, using a voice prompt, but getting margins on current jobs, subs with change orders, what's your cash flow exposure in the next 30 days, and it is an example, concrete labor, for example, on, across our last 4 jobs, what were those and what open bids are expiring in the next couple of weeks. Those are the types of things that you can extract from the data. But the answers are in your systems. Some of them are easier to get to than others. And so the way this works is first connecting your systems, connecting the AI to your systems. I've got some listed here. Whether you're running one of these systems or another system, the idea is the systems will be connected to the technology. Then, as I mentioned, you'll ask in natural language, either typing or speaking into phone, tablet, desktop, whatever the device is irrelevant, but being able to get that answer from your own data and not having to get those specifically for reports if you need quick checks on things. And those can be limited obviously to users as well, so everybody doesn't have access to the same amount of data in the same way that your systems are segmented today. And then the last scenario that we'll highlight here is just money left on the job site. So change order revenue, whether it's rain delay, owner requests, a plan revision, something that was encountered differing from what you bid, owner requesting expedited delivery. And you know how it goes. I mean, people are busy on job sites. Your project managers, even though they intend to get to those things, there are things that can get missed. We've all been there. Each event can be small, but collectively they can affect the overall margin on that job and overall revenue for you guys, and ultimately bottom line dollars. In this scenario, and there's a variety of ways that you can do this. What I've highlighted here is taking the daily reports from the field and analyzing those reports against the contracts that you guys have in place and what the change order process is and when you can write change orders for those type things. So it's going to take all that information in, flagging those change order opportunities for you that qualify as billable extras under your contract. They can be identified, prioritized. You can have it draft the change order depending on whatever that submittal needs to be and submit that for approval and then track that to closure if you want to have that track the invoicing process following that change order process on your side. And the goal obviously is to ensure that everything that you can bill for gets billed on each job. And obviously that's your goal as well. Let's dig into the demo and I'll show you this just from a visualization standpoint. And these are simplistic scenarios, I understand. And the way that I had to do this and showing it with you guys, again, is not to pinpoint this is exactly how it would look in your environment, but just to give you an idea of, again, what's possible. I mean, we've seen the without AI, we went through the manual process earlier. But if we take a look at potentially what you could do on the AI front, so it ingests that entire plan set and what we're looking for is inconsistencies in there. And in this case, it's flagged a couple of things that weren't where we expected them to be based on normal bids. And so they were flagged for follow up. So you might get that over to somebody else to take a look at. From there, you can then take these plan sets and you can push them to whatever your system is. So you can begin putting that package together. So those will push automatically to the system once it's been programmed to do that. So there's a variety of customization and flexibility in this process. But just at a minimum, I wanted you to see what the technology can do, scanning through those plans that have to be reviewed manually. And those things can be complex depending on your business and the type of job that you're doing and take significant amounts of time. On the next front, these were ones that we listed on there on margin on job subs. So just to give you an idea of what that would look like. So what's our margin on the job? Those things are output in the system. It'll tell you where you are. You can run these things anytime that you want to. Subs that have had the most change orders, whatever that question is you need to ask from your data, you could pose that in here. Cash flow exposure. So it'll show you that, flag anything that's important and needs follow up based on that. Concrete labor on the last 4 jobs, show you where you are on that. And it'll even make recommendations based on what's programmed in there from a logic standpoint, where things are going over and why, and potential causes for that. So it'll give you some things that you can flag and take a look at from that standpoint as well. And then on the change order side, so these are the daily reports, and I've just simplified these things. I mean, it doesn't matter the length of them and the details of them, but just in a consolidated form. The things that showed up in the reports are flagged in this case. We can run an AI scan against those reports, and those things will highlight things that are potential change orders based on the contracts. And I mentioned earlier, you can draft a change order if you want to do that, and based on the contract and based on what needs to be included in that, potentially even pulling data from other systems and putting that in that change order if you need that for the change orders. But being able to review each one of those things. But the idea is you've got something that potentially could qualify for a change order. It's been flagged without a human in the loop from the notes that are reported. And then you can take whatever action you deem appropriate based on that. And we know not every change is going to result in a bill, and you have the discretion of that, just depending on what the change was and size of job and relationship and things like that. But those are some of the things that you can do with this type of technology. Getting back to the few brief slides that we've got here, something that we get asked a lot, and I'll put all these up on the system, but how can you guys help if we wanted to do something like this? All the things that we talked about, there's a variety of things, and again, I'm not going to get technical on them, but there's a variety of things that are involved. But in what we talked about from the blueprint and bid analysis, that's one particular application. The business intelligence that we talked about, so being able to use that natural language to get answers out of system, and that change order, all depend on training it based on your particular business process, your connected systems. All the systems have to be connected and tied together. Project performance visibility. So building on that and fully helping you manage that from a partnership standpoint. So those are the type things that we can help you do. And it all starts with a simple conversation. So that's really kind of the ask here, is just to sort of think about things that maybe we've hit on today, things that are even outside of this that you've been thinking about internally, or maybe you're doing some things already that you want to make improvements on. And we'd love to just simply sit down and have a conversation. I mean, so that's sort of it, is to sit down. It doesn't cost anything to do that, and we'd love to sit down and have a conversation with you and find out what, if anything, makes sense for you at this point. For a lot of people that we're talking to, even if they're not ready to kind of venture down this path, and it's okay wherever you are on that journey, it could just be to start with just an AI policy. There's a lot of free tools that are out there. There's a lot of security concerns when it comes to those type things. So just having a basic policy on what you will and won't allow in your organization could just start there and then stem from that. I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday, and I said, look, we don't know what's around the corner in a couple of years, but we know that AI is going to be a part of it. And so there'll be some sort of AI in our businesses, and it's a chance for us to sort of walk together through that journey. And now we're at Q&A. I know I saw somebody with a hand raised, and I don't know how many questions are out there, Austin. So if you want to go through the questions, I'll be happy to provide answers to
Yeah.
that or follow up
Yeah,
with you after the fact.
absolutely. We've got some in the chat here, and it looks like we've got some more coming in as well. So the
Okay.
first one here is a big question that we've been asking is which platform to use and who owns the data once it's submitted.
Yeah. So well, there's a couple different ways that I can answer that on the platform side, and I don't know if you're talking about the model side, like OpenAI has ChatGPT and Anthropic has Claude. So I don't know if that's what you mean on the platform side. There's a few components that I kind of highlight that goes in this, and Microsoft is a big piece of this. And don't jump to Copilot if you've had a bad experience with Copilot. A lot of people have. So I'm not talking about Copilot in particular, but that's where most of the data lives in terms of files and any of your document structure and things like that. So there's a Microsoft component, and then there's a third party line of business application. So Procore, as an example, has data in there as well. And so it's combining those type things. And there's things that need to hit a model. And from there, I'd say it really just depends on what's being done, because the other thing that's important to kind of consider as you're walking through this, and I apologize for this being a long answer, but is token costs and things like that. So when you use an AI model, that's the currency. For those of you who haven't experienced that, they build tokens. Some of it's included in a subscription, and then you get overages based on your use for that. But what's important in it is not to use a public model for your data. So there are considerations on the private side for segmenting that and making sure that your data is not exposed to training data and things like that, which you can't control with free accounts. I hope that helps. But if that didn't clarify that question, feel free to pose it again.
Well, they had kind of a follow up on that, basically
Okay.
saying that they don't want to spend time building and training an AI assistant that then gets picked up and used by someone else to work against them.
Yeah, so that's the importance of having a model that is within the Microsoft ecosystem, because there's enterprise security that's built in that can be segmented from publicly accessible models. So there's definitely ways that you can do that in a private setup without having to sign an enterprise agreement with one of these frontier models that, quite honestly, I just don't trust.
Okay. Um, if you are training the AI to help you in all aspects of business, how do you safeguard certain sensitive information from users that shouldn't have access?
Yeah, it's one of the important reasons for having things at a base level in Microsoft, because we use Microsoft for identity today. And there's a couple things that have to be done to start with. Is one, there needs to be a data audit and a permissions audit to start with before you go down any of this path, to make sure that the data is truly segmented like it needs to be, and that the access control levels that need to be applied for users are applied and in place to start with. So that's a really, really important component of it. And then everything else that's programmed on top of that within the Microsoft ecosystem follows that same role-based access control. So that's an important part of that. And when we start foundationally with the security fundamentals that we use for everything else that we do, the models and everything else that we program and layer on top just follows suit for that. Good question.
So, would it make sense to use and build different tools for different departments?
It definitely could. Yeah. Yeah. It most definitely could. And that's why I say, with some of the suggestions that I had for use cases, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you can approach these things. I mean, it could be, I mean, like, we've seen combinations, because what I'm really talking about is a private AI model, and that's really where the questions were stemming from. But there's a lot of things that you can use public AI models for, a little cheap account and stuff like that, even on a Teams basis. I wouldn't do the personal account in any case. It's important to have a Teams account, so you have to buy two or three of those. at a minimum. Normally on the open AI side or the Anthropic side, you get a little bit more data control on that standpoint. But I definitely wouldn't, as I mentioned earlier, expose private data to that. But it could definitely be different different tools for different departments. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, next question. This is from an attendee. They say that all the AI that they've evaluated to date for reading blueprints have too many limitations for them to use. They don't recognize the materials and scope they're looking for, and they seem to be more aligned with finding square footage, volume, of product like drywall, concrete, etc. So how would the product or kind of what you're speaking of be different?
Well, I think that's what's important to note in this is none of the technology is perfect at this point. It's getting better. I mean, it's based the output that you get is based on the skills and the training that you give it. And I don't mean training like the public companies are having to train their models. So it's not that kind of thing. Um, but what I mean is, in a lot of cases for these type things, it's let's see what's possible based on what you've tried before. Is there a better way to do it, and what kind of results can we get? So I'm not promising that any of this is perfect. I'm what we're doing with a lot of people right now, because this is very very new across the board for most people. So the people that say they're experts on every aspect of this, there's not that many of those people out there, because it's all new and it's changing so frequently. So what we're doing for people that we're talking to is, let's evaluate, does it make sense to even go down and explore a particular path, and let's evaluate the results and find out if there's efficacy based on that. So that's what I would say to that is, I don't guarantee that what I'm talking about in this case is going to work perfectly, but it would be very, very well worth it from our standpoint to have a conversation and find out if there's something that we could do to produce different outputs and results that you've gotten up to this point. The models are getting better at reasoning too, and that helps in a lot of cases where you've had static correlation before. So it's getting better at the reasoning. Some of the models that they release, and they're releasing them quite a bit. I'm sure you see that just sort of, in the news and things that you read and stuff like that. So it is definitely getting better. It may or may not be exactly where you need it to be right now, but I'd definitely love to explore that with you if that makes sense. Great question, though.
All right. So another question we have here in the chat: can you have a private corporate agreement with Claude?
You can.
Okay.
Yeah, you can. They call it an enterprise agreement. Um, I wouldn't quote anything. I mean, I know what somebody I talked to last week is paying for one, but it's largely based on usage, based on number of users and things like that. So they're fairly custom from one to the next. The one thing, and I know we're being recorded on this, but I'll say it anyway. I mean, the one thing that I would be careful of, even on the enterprise agreement side, is there's so many things that are changing within the industry. And if you don't know the cursor story with Anthropic, just look that one up. So I would just be careful even marching down the path with those people, and that's my take on that. But yes, it is possible. Good question. We have any more questions, Austin? I thought I saw
Yeah.
somebody raise a hand.
Yeah. We do. So we just had one just come in. So when you're talking about private AI, you aren't talking about having your own on-site data center, correct? You're talking about leasing space from an existing data center for use by individual companies only.
You could do it that way. So that's one way that you could do it. But the challenge is, and I don't know how many of you have gone out and looked at hardware, not only just cost but also availability recently, and hardware is pretty scarce. So, I mean, a lot of these models and data center companies are buying up a lot of equipment, so it's increased significantly in price. There's a lot of ways that you can do this within private clouds, like Microsoft, for example, is one. That's not the only one, but that's one. So you can leverage the infrastructure that's been built there. And a lot of the tools that I'm talking about aren't like you've got to go buy your own expensive equipment. I mean, they're service based for all these things. And then you can isolate that from the rest for the same reasons that I mentioned earlier, because it follows the Microsoft enterprise privacy and within your tenant. So the same way that your Exchange and email data is cordoned off right now, and your OneDrive SharePoint data, that same kind of thing. But there are people that are contracting with data center companies for hardware and or purchasing their own hardware and installing it internally. I mean, that's definitely a possibility. It gets pretty expensive, not only on the upfront side, but on the operational side too. There's a lot involved on the care and feeding of these type systems. Even though you don't have to train it, there's still a lot of things that are involved in updating and putting new models in, things like that. It's a good question, though. Any other questions, Austin?
Yeah, I think another thing maybe to address would be about data security. I know we've kind of talked about that a little bit, but
Yeah.
who else can see it once it's connected?
Well, so I would think about it from the standpoint of like who can see those documents that you have today, whether they're in a 365, whether they're on a file server, whether they're in one of your systems that you use from a SaaS standpoint. As long as you have data protection based on access control, so meaning like if I'm in sales, I shouldn't be able to access accounting, for example, as just a simple example, and we've got an accounting share out there. I'm not a member of that group. I can't see it on the file level. Therefore, I can't see it when I layer something on top of it because we're using that as a foundational level to govern the security of that. So that's what we have to think about it. And for most people, I would say most of the systems that we see, especially when we talk to a prospective client and we start doing business with them, I mean, the access control to files and things like that definitely needs to have a top-down review on those type things. They're kind of all over the place. And it's mainly what we've seen. It's not that anybody's necessarily bad at doing it. It's just kind of the way that organizations have grown. You start out smaller, people need more access to things, and those accounts over time get cloned instead of segmented like they need to be. And so a lot of times that's what it is. And so it's just cleaning up those type things and taking a look at file structure and those type things and just making sure that the proper protections are in place from an account segmentation standpoint before layering on an additional layer of technology that can see everything. But yeah, it just follows whatever the user has access to. Good question. I
That's
know
all the questions
we've
I've got.
okay. I was gonna say we've got a minute left, but I've got a little bit of time if we still had some other questions for people. Any more questions on your side, Austin?
Um, I mean, I do have one more about
Okay.
what happens to the change orders or scope items, AI flags, if nobody reviews them in time. Does anything happen automatically?
No, it doesn't have to. I mean, it's whatever logic you program into it. So, I mean, in the example that I kind of walked through, things were flagged, but they're flagged for you to review. You can have it draft the change order, which is what I showed. So, I mean, following whatever process is in your bid or whatever you need to submit as evidence on your side, it can pull together all those type things, but nothing happens until there's human oversight. There needs to be a human in the loop on most of these things before they go to clients and they interface with things that are super important, especially until you validate that everything's working as it needs to. But the idea is a set of eyes, not an autopilot. So that's the way I would think about it. Also a good question. Any other questions from anybody, Austin?
That's all I'm seeing right now.
Okay. Well, if there's any other questions, I mean, so what we're going to do, I should have mentioned this at the beginning, so I apologize if somebody jumped off. If it's a team member of yours, just let them know. We'll send out the recording and we'll send this out. I think within the next day or so. So you'll have this. Feel free to reach out to us, reach out to me, reach out to your account managers that you work with. Like I said, we're more than happy to have a conversation. If this is a fit for you or not, that's okay. We'd still like to have a conversation if it makes sense and figure out if there's something that we can help with. Our commitment to you is we'll always be upfront and honest about whatever it is, that if there's something that the technology can't do or we can't help you with, we'll let you know about those things. But love to have a conversation. So just let us know how we can help. But we really appreciate everybody attending today. Hope you got some value out of it, and we look forward to seeing you on a future webinar.